fandom?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Fandom is your obsession with TV, movies, comics, and books.
Fandom is debating whether or not Goku or Superman would win in a fight. Clearly, it's Batman.
Fandom is about liking things. Join us weekly on Fandom as we talk about all of that and more. Subscribe at fandompodcast.com.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be
the owner of a comic book store.
Trust me, true believer. Well, Jagger and me, we had a running contest to see who had the most comic books in the world.
Whatever, my escape was comic books.
Net profit to me, negative $59.
I love the comics because of the brightness displayed by the fellows who drew them. They remain with me always. And when comic books first came into being, it drew me to them.
Tales from the Comic Shop.
Hey, and welcome to Tales from the Comic Shop. I'm your host, Joe, and today I'm joined by Eddie D'Angelini and Roger Prowse. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Doing good. This is Eddie, co-owner of Heidi Ho Comics and the creator of the Collector's Comic Strip.
And I'm Roger Prowse. I co-own the Nerd Store in West Valley, Utah, and I also co-run the Wasatch Comic Con.
All right. So how was your guys' week so far?
Wonderful. Well, Roger, I guess the big news in comic shops is that they're doing free comic book summer.
Yeah, which is a thing. Apparently.
So what does that mean, guys?
Yeah.
What is free comic book summer?
So from what I understand, apparently the idea is we're going to get a very limited amount of issues that we're going to be giving away for each week. So if you want all of the free Comic Book Day books, unlike normal where you could go in, get, whatever your shop limits you to, maybe hit another shop, do it all in one day to get what you're after, you're going to have to come back in your shop multiple times over multiple weeks over the course of the whole summer in order to get those books. So I think that's the concept they're running with, unless I have misunderstood it.
Which sounds like a great idea, but for some of us in a state where people are very weary of going out during the middle of the pandemic, I don't see it really helping much, unfortunately.
I'm in a state where people don't seem to care, and honestly, I don't see it helping much either. I mean, first off, the reason people went to Free Comic Book Day and the reason they showed up was only partially ever about the comic books. I mean, let's be honest, most of your customers, if they said, hey, these are the comic books I want on Free Comic Book Day, you'd throw them in their hold, they could pick them up later. They weren't going in for Free Comic Book Day for the books. They were going in for the event and for the fun and all those kind of things, and this does nothing to provide that. For somebody to come in, specifically if their only desire was to get the Free Comic Book Day books, not somebody who's already coming in, they're not going to go out of the way just to get these couple of different issues that they're being provided. It's not worth the trip. And it brings nothing to the stores because the only people that are going to be picking up are the people that are already there. So you're going to be giving away product that, as a reminder, Free Comic Book Day books do cost stores money and shipping expenses. And so we're going to be giving away these products that are not going to do anything in this scenario to generate extra sales.
Yeah, agreed. Really the whole Free Comic Book Day events that we would always do would just bring in a massive amount of people for that one day. And yeah, they all would come in and get their free comics, but they all came and would spend money on a bunch of stuff because it was basically a party atmosphere. And You're obviously running a sale at the same time, as opposed to just doing it, trickling it out over the summer for people who are there already, who are just coming to buy their pull books. I don't really see it making them want to buy more stuff.
Yeah,
really.
I don't see it either. It doesn't seem viable to me. And frankly, most of the shop owners I've talked to pretty much have all kind of laughed at it and said, okay, well, I'm cutting my orders to next to nothing on most of this stuff then, because it just doesn't seem to have any return. And a lot of them are just not participating at all. It seems to me like, Free Comic Book Day is a great event. It's a great idea. And I know it's very iconic, but it seems like a lot of people just couldn't admit maybe it needed a year off, and this was the best they could come up with, and they felt like they had to do something to make it work. And I think we just needed to come to a understanding that maybe it just needed a year off.
Yeah, there's no harm in that. But I guess maybe it just raises the question of, well, we printed all these books. What are we going to do with them now?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what most of it comes down to, and frankly, they're not going to move most of them anyways. I think that's just going to be kind of a loss because I don't think the shops are going to be signing up to take on anywhere near. I mean, I don't know what your bill normally is. I think our bill just in Free Comic Book Day books is $4,000 or $5,000 we spend just on those books.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the larger titles, I'm ordering several hundred of each of them.
Yeah.
And I just did a FOC today that included some of the first few that are going to be coming that we haven't gotten already, because I did get, I think, 2 or 3 titles already. And I just cut them way down. And some of them are just down to 0 because I'm thinking, why do I need them at this point?
Yeah, same.
So, yeah, perhaps maybe just the best thing would have been to just take a year off.
The other big news this week was some accusations of some improper behavior by Warren Ellis towards young women who are young creators trying to break into the industry. There's really a whole episode's worth of material. We're not going to dive real deep into this week. The pertinent information is the initial accusation was made by a creator named Katie West. I think it's important that the show and myself and Roger and Eddie, we all think it's important to say that we believe victims. We think it's important that we have to believe victims, and especially when they're coming forward with accusations like this. I don't think that we have enough information on hand to really do justice to what's being said. But if you want the information, it's definitely out there. There's a lot of women who have come forward to talk about their experiences. I think it's very important that we listen to them and hear them out.
My biggest goal would be to elevate some of the voices already discussing it really eloquently. And one I've pointed to and that I'd recommend people to look at is G. Willow Wilson on Twitter. Wrote about not only the individuals involved, but kind of the entirety of the culture that allowed these types of things to happen for as long as they did. So I'd really recommend for people to go read her words and see what she has to say about it.
Agreed. So yeah, don't listen to us. Listen to the people who this happened to and really take what they're saying and internalize it. And don't just pay lip service to it, or don't go after them. If you're a big Warren Ellis fan or whoever, really take the time to listen to what these women are saying before responding.
If you are a Warren Ellis fan and you love his work, this upsets you, I think that you need to make an effort to separate the work from the man so that you can continue to enjoy the work and hold up the person under the scrutiny that they deserve to be held under.
Yeah, and I think there's several other examples where you've had to kind of learn to do that in entertainment in general. So this will just add to that pile.
It seems to be an ongoing thing, really. It makes me wonder, if you are a creator high up in the comic industry, how hard is it to not be a jerk? Is it really that hard?
All right. So we're going to move on to the meat of this podcast, and we are going to be continuing our How to Collect series. This is the second episode in that series. Today we're going to be talking about investors and speculators. Roger, why don't you tell us about the difference between investing and speculating?
Yeah, I think there's two real key differences between those two ideals. First off, the way I look at it, speculating is more about making immediate income. It's about buying a book today at $5 or $3 and turning around and selling it for 10 or 20 or more to put money back in your pocket to then do that again and over and over and over and so forth to grow those funds. The idea of investing is to buy a book now, hold on to that book, enjoy that book, and then one day hopefully be able to sell that for, hopefully significantly more than what you've been able to sell it, to purchase it for, or at the very least be able to get your money back out of it after you've had the enjoyment from it. So it's a low risk area, kind of like the difference between putting your money into something like a CD or a stable account versus playing it into frequently changing stocks and things like that.
I equate it to mutual funds and possibly day trading.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. Speculating is generally going to come with more inherent risk than investment if done properly, but it also has more reward. The other big difference is speculating takes a heck of a lot more foot traffic. It takes a lot more work and a lot more effort. To be good at a comic speculator, and to be clear, most comic speculators are not good at being comic speculators. Most people that do this do not make money. Most of them lose money, and some of them lose money in a pretty big way. But if you're a good one, it's a full-time job between the research and the selling and the quantities and things that you have to do. It's a significant undertaking.
Yeah, it's definitely, it takes someone with some real nerve and savvy, I think, to pull it off and be successful. There's more to it than just walking into your shop and asking the guy behind the counter, which one of these is going to be worth money in the next few months?
Right. Or saying something trending on Twitter that's people are talking about and running in and demanding that the store sell you the one that, all the copies they have on the shelf are yelling at them because they don't have any left on the shelf.
Yeah, exactly. It takes time. You need to put in the time, and you need to research what's coming out before it comes out, and not, like you said, get it on Twitter when it's trending, because at that point it's too late.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. Yeah, and so the comic speculators that I know that have done well with it, and again, that's a short list. They develop specific skills, and they kind of network in a totally different way. As far as investment goes, your primary networking for a comic investor is really going to be finding older books. We do a lot more investing in what we call blue chip books, which are your big major key issue first appearances, gold, silver age, some bronze. Looking for those types of books, investing in those and holding those. And so you're networking with stores, dealers, find some people you trust, find some people some people you can trust to help you with grading, and some people that if you purchase from are giving you an honest, fair deal, and really kind of put your money with them. It's a lot of the appeal of it is that it's a lower work and a little bit less time, and you can do that way.
Yeah, in that case with investing, you have the luxury of finding another dealer, shop owner, basically someone like me or someone like Roger, who can curate those finds for you and help you out with the grading and give you an idea of what it is that you should be paying for it and how long you should hold on to it, how many years you should hold on to it if your plan is to resell it for more than what you paid. So really, someone like Roger or myself, we are your allies in that point of view for that side of it. But for speculating, yeah, there's not a lot of allies out there because everyone is very cutthroat and very competitive.
Yeah, so I think let's talk on the investment side of things first. This is something I know all three of us do personally to a certain extent. And so let's talk about some tips and some ideas on kind of what people can do to be good at investing and why you might want to consider comic book investing over other forms of classic investment.
Well, I would say the first two things that you really should do is learn what a key issue is and what key issues are hot and for what reason. Are they hot for the long term? Are they hot for short term? And the other point that I would definitely stress is learn how to grade. You don't need to be a professional CGC grader to learn the basics. Learn what a book in 4.0 VG is supposed to look like. Learn what a 8.0 VF book is supposed to look like, so that when you are getting to the point where you're going to drop a few $1,000s on a really nice book, you want to make sure with your own eyes that book really is the grade that it's being touted at, and that you're paying a range that is very acceptable for that condition.
Yeah.
And what kind of return you can expect for that book in that condition.
And you can often, that's not to say that you shouldn't. ever purchase pre-graded books either, but having the ability to see something and say, hey, I think that guy's selling that. I mean, how many times have you had this where you've gone to other dealers and said, that guy's selling that book as a VG. I think it's more of a fine. I think that he's low on the price on that. I mean, I've done that when I've traveled to Comic-Cons. I've bought from other dealers where I thought that they had something undergraded. And most of the time I'm right. And most of the time I do well with that and am able to just buy it right from them and either hold it or flip it once it comes back from grading.
So most of the times, though, it's usually the other way around, I find.
Overgraded.
The dealer's got a VG book that he's saying is, fine or
most
fine
dealers,
plus.
Yeah.
And you're looking at it going, man, they're asking that price for that book when
and that's
you
another
clearly
big,
see the defects.
Yeah, and that's another big reason to educate yourself. There's actually an Overstreet guide to grading. If you are going to be a serious collector of any type of silver, gold, or Bronze Age books and any sort of investment grade books, you really need to purchase and read that entire book.
Yes.
It's an essential.
Yeah, that book will tell you what defects can be allowed for each grade. And you familiarize yourself with what those defects are and what they look like. Therefore, when you're out in the wild and you are speculating on possibly buying a book raw, you can use that knowledge to make sure that the book you're getting is, correctly graded and correctly priced. Or even you can even use that knowledge to your benefit to possibly get the price down a bit.
You also need to familiarize yourself with the grading companies because a lot of dealers take advantage of the fact that people don't know the different grading companies and will go with grading companies that are maybe not as reliable because they'll get higher graded books that they then sell. I've seen dealers that, especially the ones that do touring cons, that'll try to sell PGX books for the same prices as CGC in that same grade. And I mean, it's like paying the same amount for a Geo that you would for a Cadillac. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And it's just not a good call to make that purchase. So when I purchase PGX as though it's raw. I look at it, I grade it myself, and I don't purchase it as a graded price because I don't trust them at all. I had a 9.8 it was a Daredevil, it was a key issue. I think it was the first Typhoid Mary that came in. No, it's Typhoid Mary. And it was a 9.8, and the thing had an obvious full corner bend in the spine corner with color break. And the person that's selling it to me said, "Oh, it's a 9.8," and I said, I hate to break it to you, this is not a 9.8. It just isn't." And so he wasn't real happy about it. Yeah, he wasn't real happy about that, and I ended up explaining it to him. And that comes down to having a good dealer. As many times as I've seen people try to do these comic book investment on their own without a good dealer, they get ripped off a lot when you first get started. They lose money. I had a guy that came in who bought a first Punisher he managed to get for $80, and he was super thrilled that he got this first Punisher. It was a little rough, but I mean, the first Punisher for $80 is insane. Brought it into us to show it off, and I had to inform him that it was the reprint that they gave away at the viewing of the movie.
No.
It was worth about $2 in that grade. And he was really unhappy about it. But this happens when you don't know the little things to look for. I've had that same experience many times with Star Wars #1 because the reprints are so subtle. People buying books thinking that they're getting a first print and buying reprints and finding out that they got ripped off. So
I've even been taken in by that too. I mean, we could do a whole show on that #1, the reprints, the variants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially that 35 center before you learn that trick. That's a great one.
So while we're talking about grading companies, I think it's important to talk about PGX and Halo are both notorious for missing restoration. And another thing is they will miss, I know this happened with PGX a number of times with the gold books and silver books. They have missing pages. So that's another big thing to remember about when purchasing any PGX or Halo book. You have to protect yourself because I bought a Batman 58 from a guy I met on Facebook that's a PGX graded book, and he wanted CGC value for it. And I just had to tell him there's no way because I don't know if there are pages missing from this or if there's restoration on it. And I ended up paying him about a third of CGC value for that PGX book. And that's about where I'm comfortable.
And that's a fair value comparatively. I mean, it really is. It's not like you were ripping him off.
No. I mean, if he wanted to go and send it to CGC and get it and do all that and have it come back, then we could go back and renegotiate. but he has to do that. You can't just say, oh, and another big thing you'll hear people say is, oh, this is a 9.2, but it hasn't been pressed yet. With a press, it's a 9.8. And it's just like, well, you don't know that. Yeah, that's not how that, I mean, pressing isn't magic. And, you'll see that a lot more with books in the 5 to 7 range. Guys will say, 7.0 CGC, never pressed. Well, first off, they don't know that it hasn't been pressed unless they've owned it the entire time since it came out, because you can't track pressing. So it's just, there's a lot of little stuff like that you have to be very careful about. Like, don't buy a book for full price, expecting, as an investment, expecting that you're going to press it and it's magically going to go up, X amount of dollars.
Sure. The other thing that I see a lot too is someone trying to sell a book claiming that it's raw, but claiming that, oh, well, this would easily get a 9.4 or a 9.6 or 9.8, whatever.
Especially when they claim 9.8. That just
anybody who claims 9.8 on a raw book, I run away from. Run.
Exactly. But the worst part of it is that they will then expect to get paid for what a CGC 9.8 would sell for. Yeah. When if you're going to really try to demand that price, then put your money where your mouth is, send it in, get the 9.8, then sell it. But don't try to sell it raw at the same price.
Another thing that is just absolutely essential for an investor is learn your restoration, because there's a huge difference between a C1 and a C3. And knowing what the difference is in between those, it's everything. I mean, for instance, example, I bought a Batman 2, which I had on the show as my cool thing. And when I bought it, it's a purple label. It's a C1 though, and I know exactly what the restoration on it is. And I paid close to full value, full GPA for a purple, which is something I would rarely recommend doing, but I did it on this one because I know what the restoration is on this book. I know that the restoration can be safely removed and that it will regrade as a blue when I get around to doing that.
And be very careful also about trying to do things on your books that you think would be helpful that could end up turning into restoration. I mean, I think people don't realize the type of things that they could do that could give it a purple label and how much that could impact the value on that book in a negative way.
Absolutely. I would never recommend anyone do any sort of self-restoration without any kind of expertise. Like,
no.
Yeah, definitely don't do that. And, another thing, you need to know to watch out for trimming. Like, I saw a guy, he posted up an X-Men 1 that he paid full value for raw, and, Iceman's entire hand was missing from the cover. And, it's very obvious to someone who's seen that book 1,000 times, a million times, but this guy was new in the business, new in the industry, and he got.
And this is what we were talking about to start with is, and what Eddie was talking about is find an ally, find someone like us that has been in here for a while, and we know kind of what to look for, and we can kind of, because if I sell you something like that, first off, it's gone through both me and Charles in my store, and with that, if it manages to get to you where something like a trim or something has been missed, first off, both of us would have to miss it. So the odds of that are really, really low, certainly much lower than buying on eBay or at a Comic-Con. And second off, if that happened and I knew that I sold you that copy and you bring it back to me and said, hey, you forgot this, I'm going to take care of that every single time because that's on me.
Of course.
And having that ally is a really important thing if you want to do this in a way that's safe and really protects your investment instead of just dumps a whole bunch of money into a black hole that you don't get it back.
Sure. Having someone like myself or like Roger kind of in your back pocket when you're going to pull the trigger on a big book like that is beyond valuable. It's the same thing as if you're going to buy a car and you bring your mechanic with you to check it out.
Yep, that's a great analogy.
You want to have a pro there that's going to give you the ins and out of exactly what you're getting into.
You wouldn't buy a home without hiring an inspector.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and I know, Eddie, I'm sure you probably do too, but I have customers who will buy things from somebody either online or like even a different shop, and they'll come to me and ask my opinion for it, and I'll give it to them. I mean, if they're regular customers of mine and they take care of us, I don't mind that they're not buying every book through me. I don't expect them to buy every book through me. I want them to have a good experience. So if they have a deal with a buddy, or if even if they've been lucky enough that they found somebody that they're working with that's a neighbor or an uncle, and they're trying to figure out, how much to pay is a fair value, I'm going to go ahead and put my expertise out there for them. If they're a regular and they're somebody that we have a vested interest in taking care of.
In general, CBCS sells for about 10%, 10 to 20% less than CGC in my experience.
I personally don't sell PGX books in this very low end. I get anything I purchase reslabbed before I will sell it. But I purchase PGX books at about a third what I would pay for a CGC book generally.
Yeah. I don't really know anything about Halo. I know they're international. I've never bought a Halo book.
I put them the same as PGX. I just don't see them often enough for it to be a real thing.
So purple labels are restored books, and restoration can be anything from color touch on a book to that could be a professional adding or covering up a spine tick that color breaks to somebody coloring on it with a magic marker. Tape on the inside or outside of a cover, glue also can be restoration. And then it can go from that basic to super professional. You can have people who go in and they add rice paper to fill in gaps in like a cover, or they can do other stuff to shore up how the spine to make it like stronger.
And in the 80s, if I recall, the restoration was actually considered pretty desirable, and people would pay pretty good money to people that were good at it. You had people that would actually sometimes even like hand draw in individual areas of a missing cover and things and charge quite a premium for it back then, because people really put a value on it.
And the other thing about restoration, I mean, the thing that's interesting about it's got a long history. In the 90s, what came into vogue was trimming. And trimming's the kind of restoration that can't be fixed. It's where a guy goes and he takes, hopefully he's doing it with paper cutter and not with scissors. But
I've seen both.
They go and they trim the edges. They trim the edges of the comic to make it look like there are less flaws, so they can sell it for a higher value.
Nice crisp corners, and some people sometimes it's a very minuscule amount that they trim off.
Absolutely,
but it can make a big difference in the value of the book.
Oh, any trimming at all, it makes a huge difference. And so basically, though, purple labels, they have a rating, and it's C1 to C5, I believe. And C5 would be super restored. So like there's
reproductive covers, things like that.
And amateur stuff, whereas C1 would be minimal restoration or very well done professional restoration. The trick to evaluating the value of a purple label book is you want to use what the book would grade at Blue Label. So like say you've got a 7.0 purple and it's a C5, that's going to have extensive restoration, possibly done by an amateur. The best that like a 7.0 purple C5 is going to probably grade at Blue is like a 2.0, 1.0, even possibly 0.5 in that range. It could have a married cover. It could actually be an incomplete book. Yeah, so basically, whereas like with a C1 book with like minimal restoration that can even be removed by professionals, then that's going to grade closer. Like say you've got a 3.0, that's going to grade closer to 2.0, 2.5 Blue. That's about where you want to be in your price range when you're paying for it on that ladder. So that's how.
So effectively, the restoration, whatever it does, you just don't pay for it. That's
exactly.
Idea.
Exactly. You want to be as close to what the book would. So that's another reason if you're going to be investing in purple label books, that's another reason to learn your grading. And one tip that helped me when I started off grading, I wanted to go back and add this, was on anything like between 6 and 9, all you got to do is count the flaws and give them a value of 0.2, add those up and subtract them from 10. And it's not perfect, but it will get you a lot closer than trying to learn all the rules when you're first starting out. in my opinion. That's how I did it for a long, long time.
Probably not a bad rule of thumb as any. So a green label effectively is most often is when you get a signature on a book that does not have a witness with the signature. So green labels are typically, there's some sort of defect on the book that doesn't typically necessarily impact the grade of the book. Sometimes manufacturing flaws and errors can be considered a green label depending on the type of manufacturing error. Some of them are take a hit on a blue label. Green label does tend to sell for less than a blue label in the similar condition, but it kind of depends on what it is. Like an unverified signature, if it looks pretty legit, it won't add much value to it on a green label, but it's generally not going to detract much from it, if at all, depending on the collector, although some people really hate just having a book of a different color and won't buy it for that reason. So the green label really depends on what it is and the collector. I think one of the things that's interesting about comics as a collectible is it's one of the few collectibles where imperfect books, as far as like manufacturing errors, does not tend to generally add a lot of value. There's exceptions to that for sure, certain. But most of the time, manufacturing errors make a minimal increase and sometimes even cause a decrease in value on books. And it's really depending on the collector. Some people collect for that and some people don't.
So I got a green label once from a book that I sent in. And the reason for it was it says on the label itself, manufacturer defect. And the defect was it was a double cover, but instead of a regular double cover, the second cover was the centerfold page.
Oh, cool.
And it was just such a weird, unique thing that I ended up selling that book for way more than I should have, way more than what a regular blue label would have been.
And like I said, it depends on what it's from and it depends on the collector. You got to find someone who likes that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I have to find the right one.
A lot of green labels are just, they'll have like a clipped coupon or a Marvel value stamp will have been taken out of the book.
And those will drop the value sometimes very considerably.
Yes. So it's important to read.
I even have a few dual labels. So like let's talk about yellow labels and autographs. The yellow label means a verified signature. And when we talk about these labels, we're specifically talking about CGC. They're different with other companies. But we're focusing on CGC for the reasons of, talking about people with investments. And I think we're all pretty much on the same board that CGC is the best way to go if you're talking long-term investment. So the yellow label means that it's, when you got the autograph done, it was witnessed by a CGC representative, and they verify the authenticity of the autograph. And they, if you have one of those types of things that would normally make a green label, they actually will give you like green-yellow combo labels or even purple-yellow combo labels if it's autographed on a restored book. So you can have multiple different types of labels as well.
Just real briefly, we're going to touch on red label. I personally don't have any faith in handwriting analysis as a science. I think it's a pseudoscience at best.
With red label, you're no longer talking about CGC. You're talking about CBCS.
Yes, you are talking about, but they're very prevalent and they're very popular. I would take every red label with a grain of salt. I have seen red label books where the autograph was definitely not accurate. I've seen actually an autograph from the person, and I've seen red labels where there was the Spawn 199 thank you book. Is that the name of it that Todd McFarlane refuses to sign?
Yeah, it wasn't 199, but it was a Spawn thank you book. Yes.
Okay. Anyways, it has an ASM 300 homage cover. It says thank you on it. It was supposed to be for shop owners only, and so because it's not supposed to be out in the resale market, Todd won't sign it. There was a red label. The guy cracked the slab, the red label, opened it up to see if it was actually autographed by Todd, because that would be crazy, because he's never signed those. What they had approved as real was the facsimile printed signature in his thank you letter to the shop owners who have carried Spawn.
Yep.
And
there was another instance where they had CGC red label that somebody had gotten, and they'd actually gotten the autographs from Rob Liefeld, as well as I believe Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane were the three that were targeted. And they'd actually gotten their autographs on these books, but then they had taken and traced original art that was known from these creators. So they looked up sketches that other people had paid them for and gotten done, and they traced that art onto those. And so when they sent it in, that red label came back and verified the autograph, and they sold that then as a verified art piece. which it was not. And so that's another, kind of trick that aftermarket stuff leaves people open to.
So basically, I mean, and the thing is, Yellow Label isn't foolproof either. I know there are definitely people who have snuck books past that were like pre-signed, and they have snuck the books past that process as well.
It would be hard to do, knowing that process right out. I know it would be very hard to do that, and very hard to do that at any considerable level. I mean, I am not going to discount that there might be those out there, but it's a very, very, very small percentage. Where the CBCS system and their program.
Yeah, it's just the label, and it's not. No system is foolproof. You can definitely take advantage of anyone if you're willing to look and work hard enough to find the flaw in the system. But the yellow labels are definitely the yellow labels are definitely the way to go. They're the best as far as.
I genuinely don't think you could long term take advantage of the yellow label system with CGC. I think you can maybe get away with it once or twice, but you could not do it on any sort of real volume. Knowing, again, I'm a CGC rep approved for facilitation for my con. I've done their process. I've gone through what it takes to become the kind of person that they will allow to do those kind of things. It's a absolutely strenuous and extensive process. It has a whole lot of checks and balances in it. I consider CGC Yellow Label as the most reliable autograph authentication from any company for anything, period. And I include like sports autographs and things of those nature. Does that mean it's foolproof? No, but it's as good as there is in existence.
I agree. And my point is that if you didn't witness the signature yourself, then yellow is the best. It's the most reliable. But if you didn't witness it yourself, it's even if it's 99.9%, there's still 0.1%. It's not legitimate. I mean,
I would wager it's higher than that, but I see your point.
Yeah.
Well, I've got maybe 3 books that I had submitted that I did not see the person sign it. It was done through a third-party facilitator, but looking at them, I have no reason to doubt at all that they might not be legitimate.
The process to become a third-party facilitator with CGC is very difficult.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually what led me to CGC. So to give people an idea, through CGC, for me to become a third-party facilitator, it was about 1.5 years or 2 years worth of work, and then we had kind of a trial period where we had to do very specific, focused, small signings with evidence, and we also have to bring in separate witnesses. I cannot witness for a CGC signing at my own facility. I have to bring in somebody not related to me who passes a background check, who can then witness and have both of us as checks and balances. Conversely, CBCS, I walked up to them at a Denver Comic-Con one time, and I told them, hey, I'd like to look into becoming a witness. I have a store. They said, oh, you have a store? I said, yeah. They said, okay, we'll fill this paper out and you can witness. And I said, like, at this show today? He goes, oh, yeah. All you have to do is fill this paper. They literally didn't ask for proof that I owned a store. And I even asked him, what about original art? And he goes, oh, yeah, that's fine. If you tell us they got original art from somebody, go ahead. I mean, I could have, J. Scott Campbell was there. How easy it would have been to have one of my friends that was an artist throw a J. Scott Campbell style remark on a comic book, bring it back to them, sell it as a J. Scott Campbell remark. I would have made a fortune, and it wouldn't have been that hard for me to do something like that.
Exactly.
So that's our point, though, is that just kind of very well brings it back around to my point that that CGC is the industry standard for a reason.
Yes.
And
and I'm going to continue to enjoy my signed books that I did not witness and believe wholeheartedly that they're legitimate.
Yep, I have my Hulk 181. I did not witness any of the 3 autographs on my Hulk 181. Oh, that's not true. I witnessed one of the 3, but I got Len and Herb on there, and I did not witness them. But I am fully confident in the legitimacy still.
Yeah. So I have 2 that are 2 CGC yellow labels, older Fantastic Fours that are signed by Joe Sinnott, and then I've got a Spidey that's signed by Romita Sr. and Romita Jr.
Awesome.
And I have no reason to even doubt at all. If it's CGC, I have no reason to doubt. So I would tell anybody, if you're going to start buying signed books after the fact, already graded, always go CGC. And you're never going to, I think, end up with anything that's not legitimate.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment 100%.
So why don't you guys talk about your experience with original art and signatures a little bit?
So
what are your
signature
tips?
investments, that's a big part of my investment strategy when it comes to my long-term investments. I really enjoy the signature aspect of things. I like meeting people. I like talking to people. I kind of have to for my job anyways, to try and talk to them about Arcana and those things. So, that helps. But so there's that aspect of it. But really, for the signature investing, the biggest thing I will tell people is don't get something signed that you think is an investment without CGC authorization. It's not worth it. You're not really going to make anything back on the other end. I would also really recommend, with some exceptions, they do a lot of like the mail-ins and stuff where they'll do the signature events at CGC, or you'll go to a con. Don't be the guy that goes to a con, and I've had this happen. That goes to a con, buys a book from me, walks over, gets it signed, and tries to sell it back for me for more. Don't be that guy. That's not how it works. Whatever you paid for that signature, it's not worth that much to me, or else I would have done it myself already. I have that same access. Actually, I had somebody buy a first appearance of Falcon, bring it, get it signed by Anthony Mackie. He paid him, I think, $80 for the autograph. And he brought it back to me, and I offered him about $80 for the book. And he was like, "Well, I paid that for the autograph." I said, "I know, that's the value of the book." He was quite upset. But I had to explain to him, like, if I thought that was worth doing, I would have all these books on my wall signed by him too, and it's not. Focus on, if you can go, and this is obviously not for everybody, and this is again where having an ally comes very handy, because if you have someone like me who does happen to go to, say, San Diego Comic-Con, where you can get, every year at San Diego Comic-Con, I'm able to meet very big name creators that normally don't sign for free. I'm able to get them for free, witnessed for free included most of the time. There's access to a lot of those things because it's a promotional event, not a money-making event. And there are certain cons around the country that they do that, as well as certain private events for comic shop owners and things like that. And I will, for my customers that are my better customers, and for people that I know are interested in that aspect of collecting, I will get them done, and I will take them and I will do them for them for free. They just have to pay for the expense of the grade, and I will get the actual signature because I'm there at the booth anyways, and I'll get a certain amount of them done for free for them to help them out. So it rolls back into that creating the relationships aspect we talked about.
Yeah, SIGs are they're an interesting. I mean, as from an investment standpoint, they're really hard.
It's a long-term investment more than a short-term, I think.
Well, but the thing is, if it's a short-term investment, SIGs are untenable, because generally the value of the signature is not going to exceed the cost of the witness and grading.
No, most of the time.
Yeah. So unless you are able to, and even if you get a remark on it, the remarks are generally so expensive. And a remark, for those who don't know, could be a doodle. It could be like an Excelsior, Stan Lee. Excelsior would be considered a remark.
And that's why I was saying focus on events where they're promotional events, where they're there doing those things, and they're signing for free because they're promoting a book. Or a lot of times store signings, a lot of times you'll have guys that'll go and sign for free promoting their book that don't normally sign for free, and those kind of things. And so those are good ways. But even then, it's really best as a long-term investment. And I only get things signed and graded that I want for my personal collection. I go back to the same, advice I give everybody is never invest in anything you wouldn't be fine owning if it was valueless, because that can happen to you. And so if it's something I happen to like, I'll get that yellow label put on it, but I will do that knowing that, hey, one day, when it goes time to retire and my kids don't want this crap, then I'm going to have somebody that takes it. So I do have to take that into account.
All right. So I think that about wraps up what we have to say about investing. We hope that you picked up some tips and tricks that'll help you out. We're going to briefly touch on what speculating is. So Eddie, why don't you break down what speculating is and tell us about some of the etiquette when people start speculating?
So the other side of the coin of investing is speculating. And I liken it to the day trading form of comic book buying as opposed to the investing side. These are the people that are basically coming in and getting out quick. They're the flippers. They're the ones that are jumping on the hot books, preferably right before they get hot so they can flip them for the inflated price when they do go up and everybody, all the shops sell out and everybody's scrambling on eBay or wherever to get a copy at God knows how much more times the original price. So for someone who is a speculator, I know Roger and I have talked about this quite a lot. This is someone who is doing quite a lot of research. They're basically, this is like their part-time job, really.
If they want to do it successfully.
If you want to do it successfully, yeah, this is someone who is doing the research rather than just sitting on an item waiting for it to go up in value, but doing the research beforehand to see which books are coming up, which are speculated to be hot, getting kind of the insider track on what new characters might be popping up or what book might suddenly just catch fire on a Wednesday. They're the ones that, unfortunately, a lot of times will come into the shop on a Wednesday morning and want to buy up all of the copies that are on the shelf before anybody else can. And this person is pretty much the bane of my existence whenever a hot book comes out. That he's the person, right? He's the person that forces us, unfortunately, to put a big sign on that issue saying, 1 per customer, please. That's kind of like the thing, if you don't want to be the jerk when it comes to speculating, be respectful of that. Better yet, get to know the shop owner. Get to know them personally, because you know what? They might just be a little nice and slip an extra copy for you because they like you. I know I've done that. A lot of times when someone I've never seen before comes into the shop on a Wednesday morning when a hot book is out and will try to buy multiple copies, he's the one that'll bring the hammer down and say, sorry, 1 per customer, no exceptions. But if I got a guy that I know, and I know he's a speculator, but he's a good person, and he comes in and he spends money regularly, not just on hot books, but on other stuff throughout the shop, if I like him and I think I can spare it, he's the one that I'll maybe let the rule slide for it, and I'll let him buy a couple of copies, or depending on how much I got, yeah, fine. I know it might sell out by to the end of the day or tomorrow, but 2, maybe even 3, if you're really nice to me, I really like you. But you're not going to get that by just walking into a shop unannounced and suddenly scoop up all the copies and think no one's going to care or no one's going to notice. That's the D move, as I like to call it. And don't be the D.
We won't ask what D stands for.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. So we're going to have a third part to this whole thing, which I'm going to do an interview with a friend of mine, James. And the way I met James was by being a speculator at my shop. I mean, he came in and he started out doing that, and we turned him into at least a little bit of a reader, but he's still, that's what he does. It's his hobby. But James did it the right way. And James actually has built it to where we're friends. He would tell us about books that would get hot that were on FOC so we could order more. And he would give us a warning and say, hey, this one's going to be hot. He gave all that work and all that research, and he gave that research to me. And so when he gave that research to me, he provided me with a value that others weren't providing. So when it came down to it, I had a vested interest in making sure he got taken care of as well. And if you
became an asset for you.
Absolutely. And if you can know ahead of time, I mean, there were books he would order 50 copies with us, and he got to the point where more often than not, those books that he ordered 50 copies on, he was hitting, and so he'd order 50 copies, get the variant with it. We'd sell it all to him at cover price because it didn't cost us anything extra, and he'd make some money off of it. And he has eventually built that up into making now a business where he does custom covers, and he has some of the best custom covers I've seen. They actually have done a lot of work with Peach Momoko, who's a very hot cover artist right now. He's got a lot of very well-known, large, big name creators he's working with. And the other thing he did is he toured cons with us, and he flipped books at cons, but he met all these creators. He learned how the industry worked on the inside. And now he's made that into a legitimate business over time. So we're going to have an interview with him and talk about his mentality and his tips for speculating and what to do and what not to do coming up that I'm excited for.
All right. So that's about going to do it for this episode. Tales from the Comic Shop. Thank you, Eddie, Roger. Your expertise, as always, is greatly appreciated.
You're welcome.
Absolutely.
And good night.
This show is part of the Geek Nerd Network. Find more shows like it at geeknerdnetwork.com. This is Janet.